Hello, this is Katori Noor. Welcome to the Freedom from Addiction Summit. I have Dean Taraborelli with me today. Thank you, Dean, so much for being here. And Dean is the founder of the Sanctuary up in Sedona. And he has a really amazing story of his own journey and how he's overcome his own addictions and how that's led him to help other people. And you know, Dean, welcome, and thank you so much for being so generous to share your time and your knowledge and your wisdom with us.
Oh, Katori, you know, the honor is all mine, and I think the most important thing is to get the word out that there's some other options and other ways of looking at things that I don't know that people were thinking about back in the days of Bill Wilson and you know, even in my early times of trying to be in recovery, you know, so I'm so blessed to be here and just be part of this great thing. So thanks.
You're so welcome. You know, one of the reasons that I wanted to interview you was because of your journey. I know that you've gone in and out of a lot of treatment centers, and it sounds like you've tried just about everything under the sun. And I haven't gone in and out of a whole lot of treatment centers, but as I was searching in my own recovery, I really didn't find anything out there that was really working for me, other than, for me, it was just turning to a higher source and these different alternatives, which just fascinates me about what you do, you know, up at the Sanctuary. And you know, not everything works for everybody. And I love that you are offering these alternative methods. Would you be willing to go into some of what you do up there at the Sanctuary?
Sure. I think, you know, the way that I got into this way of thinking, way back in the day, you know, I started drinking and of course it was fun, and that's how most people begin their addiction. And if we look at sort of the basic drivers of human behavior in the most rudimentary way, we seek pleasure and avoid pain. That's what all beings do. So that's why things like food and sex are pleasurable. So we do them and propagate our species. And so many of us start by, because, hey, it's fun. You know, I can dance better, or I can have courage to talk to somebody from the opposite sex, or, you know, all those things. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, well, why can't I do that unless I'm intoxicated?
Mm-hmm.
What is it about the way I think and feel about myself? And that begins the journey of what really makes a person tick. So when I first began my journey, I go to treatment the first time, and I'm sitting across from somebody and they say, hey, you know what, you are an alcoholic and an addict. And I thought, okay, well, you know, I'm not crazy, right? So I can function in the world. I'm not stupid. You know, I've got moderate intelligence. It's not that I don't know that all this is going on and it's bad, but I can't stop. So I'll take it. And it explained everything. Yeah. And I became the quintessential addict. You know, I was going to all of these meetings and things, and this was my new identity, you know, because all of a sudden it made sense. And then I relapsed. And, you know, hey, being around a little bit, you know what happens when addicts relapse. You know, they hit it hard because that's what we're expecting. Yeah. And so then the cycle continues, and I tried so many things, and any kind of conventional treatment I did. So I've been in some of the best treatment centers that money can buy. I wanted to get well, so I participated and worked in them. I was not resistant. I followed instructions to the T, right up until I got high again.
Yeah.
And I noticed that, hey, wait a second, I'm not the only guy that this is happening to. And all of those things, you know, the messages that we get sometimes in recovery is, hey, you're doing it wrong. You know, like it's a simple thing, and take the cotton out of your mouth and stick it in your ears and all of those cliches. And I was doing that, but I couldn't get it, and it was only making me feel worse. So at the same time, excuse me, I started to search worldwide. So if I heard of some doctor somewhere, some shaman somewhere, some mystic, some teacher, some this, so I scoured the planet. And one day I woke up and I thought, gee whiz, nobody knows more about this than I do. I mean, all the counselors that I've sat in front of, wow. So I realized that we are holistic beings, right? So we have a body, we have a mind, we have a soul, and we have a spirit. And all of those things are markedly different aspects of who we are, and they require markedly different interventions. And I also noticed that if a program or a process is not holistic, or it's not addressing all of these things, it's going to come up short.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of the sanctuary process. And that's how it came to be.
Wow. So what year did you open the sanctuary up there?
We've been here for about 15 or 16 years, something like that. And, you know, it's so interesting, Katori, when I first began this process, we were like the only holistic center out there. When you would Google, you know, holistic addiction recovery, you know, one thing came up, that was us. Now holistic is like the key word. It's like everybody's holistic, and which is great, don't get me wrong. But I think that there's a big difference between throwing a little yoga and a little meditation in the mix and really being holistic. And I know that you talk a lot about purpose, and that's an important part. That's a soul thing. So when we talk about different aspects, what's interesting about the soul is I can't get to the soul through the mind. And many times I've sat in these AA meetings and I've heard people use the expression, you know, I have this hole in my soul and I can't fill it no matter what. There's no chemical, there's no sex, there's no amount of money that's going to fill the hole in the soul. And that's true. But we're not going to think our way to the soul. So really this process, again, we have to detox the body. We have cellular memory in the body. So your body remembers all the trauma, all the things that have happened. It's stored in the body. We got to get that out of there. Most of what happens to people is all happening in the unconscious mind. So 95% of your brain activity is unknown to you. And that's where we store all of our beliefs, all of our unprocessed hurts and wounds. It's so interesting. You know, our conscious mind, I can't remember what I had for dinner yesterday, but my unconscious mind remembers everything. Every crossword said, every time my parents said, oh, only a B, what, that you couldn't do better than that? All of those times, that's all back there. As well as any kind of my unprocessed trauma. Then we have the soul, and then we have our energy body. These are fairly complex, different aspects of us. But when we put them all together, a person's chances of recovery are markedly increased. And this just makes sense, right? It just, it kind of is common sense. I don't know that anybody could argue with that.
Yeah, no, definitely. So when you talk about when you're detoxing the cellular memory, how do you go about doing that?
Well, if we look at just the ways, interesting thing about your body, you know, most of the cells that are in your body right now, Katori, anywhere between 50 and 100 trillion, they weren't there last year. And you don't have many cells, maybe a few in the gut and a few in the brain and a couple in other organs that you had at birth. Other than that, your body's renewing itself all the time. So as, you know, just like we have muscle memory, we have cellular memory of trauma. So because the body is tactile, it's physical, you know, hey, we have to use physical interventions. And primarily it's what we put in our mouths. And right now, food is such a topic. And most of the food in the supermarket is toxic. So if you read a label on some food, even though it's not psychoactive, it's affecting my body in really toxic ways. So we got to use nutrients and detoxing nutrients to do that. We use also a lot of touch, a lot of body work. You know, while it feels good and people think that's to soothe you and, you know, you go for a relaxing piece of body work, it's actually working on getting these energy flowing, stuck traumas in the body. And also the body needs to move, you know, the body has to move. You have a limb system that needs to move. Yoga is not only a way to get energy moving and be present and connect the breath to the body. So all these things. So these are interventions of the body.
Yeah.
And when you do all that, it helps to detoxify cellular traumatic memories in the body.
Wonderful. So diet. So what you're putting in, being conscious and aware of what you're putting into your your skin, your eyes, your ears, your mouth, and having it be of a higher consciousness is what you're saying. So like when I heard you say that the food in the grocery stores, would that are you referring to like the non so like when I walked down the aisle yesterday, I'm just cutting through the grocery store to get to the front. I'm going down the cereal aisle and I'm looking at all of this food that's in boxes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, none of this is food. This is just all chemicals. And we put this stuff in our bodies and we wonder why our brains and our bodies aren't functioning the way that we would like them to, or why we're not emotionally feeling well. So the kind of food that you're using, are you getting organic? Are you growing it yourself? Or are you just going to like a farmer's market, getting organic? When you talk about, the kind of food that you're using to detox, because I do believe food is medicine, what kind of food are you using?
Good question. And you're bringing up some points. And before I answer that question, one of our mentors is a guy named David Perlmutter, who's pretty well known in the whole brain, and we're actually using his brain detox protocols. What's interesting is that on a call that he did with our staff, he said that now they're finding that depression and anxiety, the precursor to that is inflammation. So we used to think that they were co-occurring, that they happened kind of simultaneously. Now we know that, hey, inflammation is a gigantic problem, and it's a cause of depression and anxiety. So now inflammation is primarily caused by toxicity. So food that's toxic is inflaming me. It's sending, I eat this inflammatory food and I have something then called gut dysbiosis. So that sends a signal unconsciously to my brain that I'm not okay. So of course I assign that to my job, all of a sudden, oh my God, I'm so stressed out. Meanwhile, it's happening internally. So I would suggest that people just get the best food that they can. For us, as you said, food has consciousness. Food is information.
Mm-hmm.
So all the cells that are in your body right now, hey, my muscle, hey, that used to be a tomato and a carrot, so get the best tomato and carrot you can. Organic is just kind of entry level, because even organic food doesn't have the same nutrients that it did 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So, farmers market, locally grown food, again, these are people that are putting their attention in the food. They're putting their love in the ground. They're putting, their energy into this thing. Our food, we serve meat here, but we know where it all comes from. A cow that's happy and grazing around until its final day is a lot different than a cow that's in a factory farm. Just in terms of how it thinks and how it feels, and the impact on the planet as well.
Yeah.
So all of these things add up to the quality, plus the chef. Our chefs consider food medicine, just like you said, and when they're cooking, they're in a certain place because they believe that this is medicine.
Yeah.
So, and not everybody has to go to that extent. But I'll tell you that the more we participate in what we put in our body, because we know I go and I take a Xanax, hey, 15 minutes later, I'm feeling different. Well, the same, even though it's not as instantaneous, the same thing happens with food.
Yeah.
So use the best, the building blocks of your brain cells and your body cells. So use the best food that you can.
Wow. Yeah, that's so great. It just really, this morning I had a choice. Am I going to juice, or am I going to eat this healthy, I made it, breakfast cookie, right? Still healthy, but it's got grains and it has some stuff that bring up, like you said, the inflammatory. And I chose juice and some pasture raised eggs. And so glad. I feel so much better in my body because I know what you're talking about with that and that inflammation. And it's so great to know that it's actually causing these disturbances in us. It's really good information. One of the other things that you had said was touch. So, you know, I've heard things like we need to have a minimum of 12 hugs a day to grow, right? So I'm a big hugger. When you're, say someone comes up to your center and say they're inquiring about, you know, what kind of touch. So is it massage? Is it, can you go more into that?
Well, we use, a lot of our people get a lot of body work here. So that would be different forms of massage.
Mm-hmm.
Again, our massage therapists are also working on people's energy system. You know, our muscles are connected to our nervous system. Mm. So our primary modality, there are different kinds of massage, and you know, you name it, everything under the sun that you've seen at any spa that you go to. But I think the primary thing to know is it's not about relaxation, although it can be. This is about needing this stuff out of our tissues. You know, I've heard this expression, get your issues out of your tissues.
Oh, and I like that.
That is, it needs to happen. We also do that through different kinds of breath work and other trauma release techniques. But the touch piece is body work. And you said something important. You know, people are gregarious. We're pack animals. We're tribal. Any successful cultures are actually cooperative, not competitive. Mm. And so people are isolated. They're alone. You know, this addiction, the interesting thing about addiction is a lot of times addicts are considered to be selfish. Hey, I'm out, I'm selfish, all I'm thinking about is myself, and self will run riot and all of that. And, you know, I'd like to introduce another way of looking at that. And when we're in pain, our attention becomes very inward. So right now I'm out, you know, we're just outside of Arizona, Sedona, and I'm looking out the window now, like those beautiful mountains there, the sun is shining. And, you know, if all of a sudden I was out hiking and I broke my foot, all of a sudden my attention would be focused on that. So all this beautiful scenery would disappear and my focus is now on my pain. So as we get in the throes of addiction and it's painful, of course our focus is all internal, right? That doesn't mean we are selfish in nature. It means I hurt, and therefore that's getting all of my attention right now. And in doing that, I isolate myself from others and I become more separate. And separation it's horribly painful. So when you can hug, and that's why we have a really small population here, because people, it's very intimate. You know, to go to the depths that we need to go to, we need to feel safe. Yeah. And we need to feel loved. Yeah. And I'll just let you know, I was at this conference all about addiction and therapy, and somebody who did a lot of research and came up with, you know, your relationship with your therapist or your healer or whoever's helping you is 500% more important than any intervention that they'll use. So whether they use cognitive behavioral therapy or this, that, the other thing, none of that stuff is significantly less important than how I feel with you.
Yeah. And
therefore we have to create safety. We have to create this feeling that a person can relax into their process. And whether that's, you know, giving them a hug and touching in whatever way. And of course we have to check in what's right for them. Yeah. You know, hey, I'm a big hugger too, and you know, just hug just about anybody, but that doesn't, you know, work for some people initially. So
yeah. So you had said something about connection, and something that I've experienced, and I've seen other people experience. It seems like, and I'd like you to speak on this. How do you view like the like we're so disconnected from one another? You know, like we have neighbors, maybe not so much in Sedona, but here I'm in Mesa, Arizona, and I don't know all of my neighbors. You know what I mean? It's like someone can you can reach reach out to them, but people are so just in their, like, in their little boxes. Do you know what I mean? And then they're struggling. Like, I know some people that are really struggling with it. And I feel so strongly that, you know, like you said, that when we're in pain, it's like we want to protect ourselves. We want to withdraw. I don't know if we even want to withdraw, but we just naturally withdraw. How would you, how would you support somebody to find that courage to find someone to reach out? Because, you know, our viewers, they're, I'm sure that there's a lot of them that are in that place and they're in that pain, and they're scared to reach out because they're going to feel rejected or judged. Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, I think if we look at AA or any 12-step process, hey, they've been around a long time and they work for some people, and hey, it's a tried and true thing.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the best medicine of AA, what is about AA, is the fellowship of AA. It's a community. So I get together, you know, and not to oversimplify, but I think if people got together and talked about plywood for an hour a day, they would feel better, because all of a sudden I belong.
Yeah.
We need to belong to something. And I think, Katori, you know, I gave a talk not too long ago, and I was trying to think about using, you know, how do we describe the soul and things like purpose and meaning and connection and community, all of these things that seem on the hierarchy of needs to be not so important, right? We're taught that you got to have a job, you got to be successful, you got to have a whatever. And then when somebody says, well, gosh, I don't really have a purpose, everybody's like, you know, hey, that's a midlife crisis, go buy a Porsche or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think when we look at, and I thought of this example of these inner city kids that have no meaning and purpose, and they'll join a gang.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden they have meaning and purpose and connection and structure and hierarchy, and all of a sudden they have value. They know where they fit and belong, and they're interacting with others. And the risks that these people will take to get in these gangs is extraordinary. So again, I'm not condoning that. Please don't hear this. But it's just a testament to the human soul.
Yeah.
These kids sometimes go commit a murder to be in that. And everybody knows, Katori, what jail means, and nobody wants to be incarcerated, but it's worth it. It's that important. So I think for people that are potentially watching this, go on meetup.com and type in something that you're interested in. And I bet that somebody is doing it. And, you know, and that way you're already comfortable, because it's like, wow, I love to knit, you know, just pick something, or I like to ride my bike, or I like to do this. And wow, there's a bike meetup group, and they're going to meet in Central Park at, you know, Saturday at noon. And I go meet some people, and all of a sudden I can get out and start to connect with like-minded people. So we call that here a tribe.
Yeah.
And we're tribal. That's, again, who we are. We've lost our nature. You know, we've lost connection to our deep, authentic core self.
Yeah.
And these are part of what make us who we are. So, and I also think that those are the things that make these 12-step groups successful. I think it's less about the steps themselves, again, but that's a process, and I don't want to in any way discount that. But I think that the fellowship is what's driving that.
Yeah, that's really great. Meetup.com. That's a really, really good suggestion, because I think, you know, a lot of us feel alone, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, you can go and you can find, because I've checked it out a few times, like you can find things about shamanism and mysticism and meditation and you name it, they have it. You can have cooking and thising and thating, you know, anything under the sun. People are just forming these groups because just because a person doesn't have an addiction doesn't mean that they don't need the same connection that we do, right?
Yeah, everyone needs connection. We all do.
Yeah.
For sure. You know, when you had said about, you know, meeting up at a a park, it brought me back to one of the aspects that you were sharing about, that you guys practice up at the sanctuary, up at your center. And you were talking about like moving, like getting into your body. And you had mentioned yoga. Do you also, and then you had also mentioned that you were like, if you were hiking and you broke your foot, but what kind of movement are you guys practicing up there?
Well, there's, yoga is a very spiritual and connective present process. We do a lot of hiking, exercise. There's a phenomenon now that's getting to be more popular, and it's called epigenetics, this scientific body of information, which says that, hey, wait, my cells, yes, at the moment of conception, I got my mom and my dad, and that became my genetic blueprint, and that's it. So you got the addict gene, you're stuck, that's it, that's your lot in life.
Yeah.
And now what we're finding is with research, actually, yes, that is your genetic code, but whether genes express themselves or not is a function of our environment. So genes actually change depending on our environment, and a way we can understand that is something called adaptive mutation. So, hey, if an ice age were coming right now, and it was getting colder, and we were living in a cave somewhere, our genes wouldn't say, gosh, I hope this guy's smart enough to go get himself a nice coat. We would begin to adapt, so we would grow fur. Another example of epigenetics is people in different parts of the world have different skin colors. So people that live in very hot climates have darker, or very sun climates have darker skin. People in more northern parts of the world have lighter skin, and the reason why that lets more vitamin D in. And so we need vitamin D. That's a nutrient that my body needs, and we get it from the sun.
Yeah.
And so therefore, if I live in a place where I have less sun, my body's going to change so I can get the nutrients that I need. And if I have a place where the sun is shining on me all day, okay, I have to block out that sun. So that's epigenetics. So another way we can say that is genes are either upregulating, which means they're coming online and they're expressing in their fullness, or they're down-regulating, meaning we're dying. And we can actually control that. And one of the things that's really important to that is exercise.
Okay.
And so we got to move our body. And another thing that's important to that is, hey, we got to get out in nature. It's interesting. One of the things we spend a lot of time on here, Katori, is the energy body. And you have this field that's around your body. It's electrically generated. People that are old enough that have ever driven under a high voltage power line and got static on their radio, doesn't happen in the digital age anymore, but it happens on AM, even though I didn't even know they had AM anymore, but somebody told me that. And so, hey, the wire is 100 feet above me, but I'm getting static on the radio. Well, electricity going down a line creates a field. And you might have heard that people live under those power lines get sick. They get cancer at a higher frequency.
Yeah.
So, all of our nerves are electrically generated, so we create a field around us. And this field is how we pick up information. And everybody, I think, would agree that if I go out in nature, I feel better. There's just something about it. If I went to an art gallery that had all pictures of nature, I wouldn't get the same feeling because I'm not in the field. So that's another big aspect of the healing process. It's a whole other topic of discussion.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the movement that we do is about helping this epigenetic process. Again, everything that you do, everything that you think, everything that you feel is sending a signal to your body to tell it to be healthy or to shut down and die.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, now I'm not just a victim of my genes anymore. Now all of a sudden I'm a participant in my demise. And I can understand also that it's not just about, hey, you're just an addict and this is your lot in life. Wait a second, there's something I can do about this.
Yeah, so that could be good news or bad news. Depending on how somebody looks at it, right?
Yeah. What's interesting, everybody says, when you ask them the question, do you want to take responsibility for your life? Everybody's like, yeah, of course I do. And then you're like, okay, well, you can't blame your mom anymore. You can't blame your dad anymore. You can't blame your circumstances anymore. People are like, oh, wait a second. I'm not sure I'm ready for that just yet. But ultimately, recovery is a process, as you know.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And oh gosh, you know, I had seen it was a TED talk that you had done, a TEDx talk, and you I love how you used being recovered instead of being in recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
can you just like describe the difference on your context for
sure. You know, a lot of people, it's so interesting. Some people take offense to that remark because, you know, somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, are you the place that talks about being recovered?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And, you know, I've been challenged many times on this. And they were like, "Well, how do you do this? This is a lifelong incurable disease." And I'm like, well, like many lifelong incurable diseases of the past that we don't even hear anymore about because science has eradicated them or they're just not, maybe addiction can be that too. And we look at the process of neuroplasticity, that's how the brain learns and changes. And we look at epigenetics, that's how my cells actually express differently. And all of a sudden we've got some science to back this up. But I think for me, you know, my whole identity was about being an addict. Hey, 30 years, 20 of it in treatment. You know, I mean, I was pretty committed to that identity. And now I don't even think about it. It doesn't cross my mind. And I have taken opiates because I got an operation on my mouth one time, you know, a couple years into this thing. And, you know, I had been to so many AA meetings where people would get, you know, they're going to have an operation in the future. They'd be so panicked about the pain meds and what am I going to do? And oh my God. And I was like, holy smokes, this is so. Lo and behold, a few years go by. I need this operation. And the doctor's like, you're going to need something. So, you know, I had a very juicy heroin habit for a long time. And so I know what opiates feel like, you know, like anybody that's watching this knows what their drug of choice feels like. It's like your old friend.
Yeah.
So I take these opiates and all of a sudden they didn't feel the same way. I took them for one day and then I stopped and this little bottle of pills stayed on my nightstand for a week until they fell in the drawer. And, you know, a couple weeks later I'm rooting around and I'm like, wow, these things. And it occurred to me, wow, my body responded differently.
Wow.
Somehow my body, I had a shift. So our whole work is about having a perceptual shift. Because when we change the way that we look at something, what we look at changes. And this is quantum science. This is not just some spiritual thing. Mm-hmm. And so my body, I don't have any addicted cells in there anymore. I don't think about it. I don't ever really share my story of all those horrible, you know, hey, 20, 30 years of addiction. I got some doozies, just like everybody else, right? I mean, I've been dead twice. I've been overdosed 25 times, hospitalized, you name it. None of that stuff is really relevant anymore. So it's really how I identify myself. And when we can resolve the past, then we are no longer informed by the past. And so then we can begin to define ourselves by who we're becoming. And so we got to work out our past. And then we're free to define who we're becoming and define ourselves by our future. So I'm not some addict guy that, you know, had all those dark nights and days. And, you know, my dark night of the soul, I think, was a 5-7 year experience where I was going to, you know, I was too afraid to blow my head off and too afraid to, you know, I didn't know what was going to happen. Yeah. And I was all alone. The interesting thing is that, you know, when we talk about everything that goes on here, people talk about their addictions in a very limited way here. We don't tell them to stop talking about it, but once we start getting to their underlying pieces, again, what drives a person to hurt themselves? Yeah. Nobody knows that answer because it's all unconscious. And our unconscious coping strategies to deal with these situations that we were in, hey, they work until they become dysfunctional. And until we rectify all that, we continue to relive the past over and over. So once we can shift our perception, meaning I look at the world a whole different way and look at myself a whole different way, and all of a sudden things change. So when we talk about being recovered, it's about how I identify myself. And to be honest with you, it just doesn't take up a whole lot of space in my mind. I don't wake up and say, God, I hope I don't do any heroin today. I wake up and I'm like, wow, what amazing thing is going to happen today? And I even work in the addiction field, and I don't think about my own addiction. And so I just want to be clear, we're an abstinence-based program because we need to be clear to get to the things that we need to get to. And that includes like, hey, psych meds there too can numb us. And again, no criticism of medication. Hey, if you're going to jump off a bridge, get something. You know, somebody's suffering, help them.
Yeah.
But that's now become a lifestyle for so many. And Katori, it's so interesting. A lot of people ask me this question. They say, okay, well, if I'm recovered, does that mean I can go get high again? And believe it or not, mostly therapists ask me that question. Yeah. And my answer to that question is, you know, if your definition of being well, having attained freedom means that you can go and take a substance that'll impair your perception, then you probably need a little bit more recovery. Yeah. Because for me, being recovered means I can wake up and I can do whatever I want. And I can experience whatever I want, from the highest highs to the lowest lows and everything in between. And it's all part of life. And so not condoning that people can go get high again, but I am saying that, and it happens here without fail, that you can look at yourself differently and begin to not have this addict thing take up so much space in your life, in your thought process. And to people that have spent the kind of time that me and maybe you have spent in addiction, if we told them that up front, they'd be like, oh, they're crazy. Yeah. But it happens 100% of the time.
Yeah. Do you, that's so great, Dean. You know, you had done it all brings me back to purpose. Like you had mentioned purpose, and I know that you have a really great, it's short, but it's a really powerful video on purpose. And, you know, when I hear your story, it's such an amazing story. And, you know, to be where you are now and where you were, was there like a turning point where did you come to like a realization? Actually, I think I heard this on another interview that you did. Like there was a time, right, when there was like an aha moment, like where the tires meet the road sort of thing. Can you share about that?
Yeah, you know, I was very close to my death, and you know when it's coming, and you know, hey, more accidents, how many more times you can be hospitalized, right? How many more times you can overdose? And I was just out of energy. I was out of hope. It wasn't that I was angry. I just didn't have the energy and so I'm just waiting to die. And what bothered me more than anything, as I was preparing myself, it wasn't losing my family. It wasn't, you know, not climbing Mount Everest or my bucket list. It was that I didn't do what I came to this life to do. And I had no idea what that was, but I knew that there was some meaning to this whole thing, you know, and it just occurred to me, and I said, you know, God is going to say one day, you know what, this kid's not getting it. Give his assignment to somebody else. And when I tell you how that irked me, and it irked me enough to get me to my last treatment center. So I go to this place, and it was the worst treatment center I've ever been to. I mean, just total incongruence, you know, and I'm watching this thing, and I'm like, wait a second, this is not what treatment is supposed to look like. And at that same time, this all happened over the course of about a month. I had a vision of all of my counselors, because I paid attention, man. I paid. From the first counselor, I said, tell me what to do. And I paid such attention to them. And so I saw them all go by, kind of like that Ghost of Christmas movie, you know? And it occurred to me, wait a second, these are all well-meaning people, but the majority of them were not well or awakened.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, it occurred to me the vision for the sanctuary got downloaded over the course of a month. And one day I woke up and I said, I'm leaving here. This is my last treatment experience. I know what I'm doing. I had a full career in a company back east. I said, I'm going to Sedona, and we're going to create a center that is going to fill in all of this missing pieces, because I've scoured the world, and that is my purpose. And all of a sudden, like I had it. And you ask about purpose, and it occurs to me, next time you're out in nature, you'll see that all the little birds, bees, bugs, trees, plants, all of these things have a function, right? This bird eats this thing's protecting that, this gives off a thing to that. It's all the matrix of nature is all interconnected. And everything has a purpose, just like in our body. Hey, there's no spare parts in there. Like now we know appendix does something. And, you know, so it occurred to me, wait a second, we need to be participant in this thing. We have to have a purpose, no matter how big or how small. And that's really what, in all the spiritual traditions, service is a big deal. But nobody ever really explained it to me in that way. They just said, hey, you know, we need coffee. You make the coffee, or bring the birthday cakes, or whatever we do at 12-step, which was great. Again, I hope, and there's no criticism about any of this. You know, these are all just ways of looking at things. But the purpose, and this is where I think a lot of the millennials that are getting a bad rap right now, you know, everything needs to function and have meaning. And I'll let you know that life has whatever meaning we assign it. So if we wait for somebody to come and assign a meaning, plenty of people do that. Watch the news, go to school, and that's why people feel so badly about themselves, because, hey, all of our creativity is beat out of us, you know, or educated out of us. But this whole purpose thing, having a reason to get out of bed in the morning, having a reason to live, having meaning in your life, that's what keeps me going. And that offsets the need to go into like daily recovery things. You know, I do have a daily practice, but I think my primary thing is that I'm fulfilling a purpose, and that is a soul thing. Purpose is a soul thing. So you got a hole in your soul, fill it with some purpose, because no money, no drugs, no sex, no notoriety is going to fill that hole the way having something that means something to you.
Yeah, gosh, Dean, that's so good. A couple things actually come to mind when you share that. One, it makes me kind of giggle. So I've had this mug for years. I don't even know how many years. And it says, life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself. And, you know, it's like I thought when I bought it, I thought that I understood like what that meant. And yet I still was like trying to find myself, like searching and searching and searching and searching. And then it wasn't until recently, probably until, you know, I decided to do this summit. It's like, oh my gosh, those desires that we have added with the pain that we've experienced in life, it's like, bam, it's like pain plus desire equals our purpose. And what do you think about that?
Well, I think most of us, when we think about the process, and we call it the hero's journey, and in order to get well, we must turn our problems into our medicine. So it's interesting, hey, 30 years and what my parents went through and all that, I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. But without all that, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you, and I wouldn't be, you know, I wouldn't be here doing this thing. And I have to tell you that there's no other center doing what we're doing. People still think we're a little out there, but I can tell you, we get the hardcore cases, and by and large, they shift. And so I think that part of the journey is, you know, there's so many ways that this is said. Hey, life gives you lemons, make lemonade. The alchemist turns lead into gold. Once I have the gold, there's no more lead. Then I can stop talking about it. It's so interesting, and this is my opinion. You know, when somebody gets the lesson, the teacher stops coming. And so when you go to see a great doctor who's a little bit older, do you think he sits and ponders about how tough medical school was? No. That's gone. Like, he doesn't think about how he got there. When we get the gift, we'll forget how we got the gift. And that's why, for me, when I finally realized, wait a second, I know more about this than any counselor I've sat from. I'm going to put this out in a way that I can help some people. All of a sudden, all those stories, the war stories that we incessantly hear, they're all gone. And so this is an archetypal thing that's part of all of us. And everybody wants to be their own hero. You know, everybody wants to transcend all of these inhibitions that I wind up then taking all kinds of medication for. The interesting thing is, hey, that cuts out all the lows, but it also cuts out all the highs.
Yeah.
And let's face it, anybody that has an addiction is looking for something.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? We're searchers. We want more. We want more meaning. You know, we want all these things. We've associated more with selfishness, more money, more of this. And I don't think that that's true. I think what people want is more deeper connection, deeper love. I don't care how good my relationship is. I want it deeper. I want to know more. And that's called curiosity. And it's actually part of the human spirit. We're all explorers. And so when we honor that part of us, instead of calling it crazy or, oh my God, I can never do all that because I have to pay the mortgage and the bills and the kids and blah, blah, blah. And hey, that's all true. But when we do that, we forsake the soul and we die.
Yeah.
And I don't mean death like as it happens in one thing, I get run over by a car and die. I'm talking about the death that happens little by little. I give away a part of myself, and then pretty soon I'm more dead than alive.
Yeah.
And of course, nothing like some dope or a drink or a martini or a big hoagie or whatever people do to medicate that, you know? Yeah. So we got to get to the cause, not the symptom, because most addiction treatment, virtually all of addiction treatment, is about symptom management. Mm-hmm. And as long as we're good managers and I keep everything kind of in its place, I'll be okay and I won't get high. And again, if that works for you, blessings, you know. But for a lot of people, that doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
You know, and so what we need to do is get into these pieces and reconnect to our essential self, that deep part of us that we've relegated to the unconscious mind. Wake that up, and that's where we're going to find our purpose. Yeah. Not in the head. And a lot of times we connect the soul to the heart, and the heart has its own frequency, as you know, and a way that we can understand, the viewers can maybe understand this way. Hey, I fall in love. My love lives in New York City, and I get the idea that I'm going to go have dinner with her tonight, and I'm going to be back here in time for work tomorrow. So I'm going to take the red eye this way. I have to spend 2 hours with her, right? So the heart goes, yeah, do it. The head goes, that's the stupidest thing I have ever heard. That makes zero sense. Are you out of your mind? So we understand that these different aspects of us function in different ways. And so, again, we don't want to get rid of the head, but we don't want the head to be, because, again, most of us are operating in our lower brain in reactive mode because we haven't resolved PTSD or fight or flight or the trauma that we've had. So many of us are spending our lives reacting and not creating.
Yeah. Gosh, that's so great, Dean. When you talk about getting to the cause of it, and I know that's a very large topic, but how would, say someone is like, they've never heard that before, or they're in the inquiry of like, well, how do I get to the cause? What's somebody's first step?
Well, That's what our whole process is about. So it's not, I don't know that that's an easy thing, but I can tell you this, that in our early formation, the way that we get our information, our beliefs, the way we look at the world, most of that happens before we're 8 years old. So you kids are sponges, right?
Yeah.
And we've all heard that, you know, parents are having a little argument. Oh, the kids are watching TV, they didn't hear. A week later, the kids verbatim repeat the whole thing, every cuss word, everything, because it's just like a tape recorder. They're taking it all in.
Yeah.
The information, the thing is that they don't have like a higher brain function organization yet to say, oh no, I don't like that, or yes, that makes sense. No, that doesn't make sense. So just imagine the message is, even parents that are very well-meaning, and now there's this whole attachment process that happens. That's another topic. But let's just say a person gets the message, oh my God, oh, you only got a C. Like you can't do any better than that. Oh wait, I'm not good enough. I'm not that. What's interesting is if I have a belief that I am not good enough, and there's probably a lot of people that will understand what I'm talking about. I can have all the degrees from Harvard. I can have all the money in the bank. I can have all of these things and I still feel that way.
Yeah.
So we get all this stuff at an early age. The second way that we get these things is through experience. Hey, I put my hand on a hot stove and I only have to do that one time. And our brain files that. What's interesting is that if we look at the process of the decisions that we make during stress or fight or flight, these are often survival programs. And when I get in a situation, let's say a little kid gets lost at the supermarket, okay, and one kid thinks this is the best 3 hours of their life, right? They're running around having a great time. Another kid goes into terror. So now I'm fight or flight. So I'm thinking in a survival way, which means my perspective is very narrow. Mm-hmm. And let's say that this kid says, you know what? If I ever find my mother, I swear to God, I'll never let her out of my sight. Makes sense? So whatever decisions we make in fight or flight, they get planted in our unconscious mind. So, hey, a couple hours later, the kid and the mother are reconnected. Everything's fine. The kid even gets some ice cream cone, you know, no child protective services. Nobody's getting arrested. 30 years later, this kid now lives with his girlfriend. She comes home one day and says, oh my God, I want to go away with my friends for the weekend. And he says, oh, go, have fun. So she goes, and now all of a sudden, wait, the person that I assigned my safety to is not here. So he starts to get agitated. And he's like, you know what? She's cheating. She's not with her friends. She says, oh, he's getting all worked up. Mm-hmm. And what happens is he thinks it's about this situation. He's reliving the supermarket, but he doesn't know it. Wow. So what we have to do is get to the realms of the unconscious mind. Mm-hmm. And that's what's driving our behavior. So when we look at root causes, they're all back there. And what we do is, I'll go to see a therapist, and naturally my last relationship broke up. So that's what I'm focused on. What we have to do is find out about our first relationship. And because these are where our strategies get all locked in. And so it's not the last time. Most of the time, by the time people come to the sanctuary, they're on version 260 of the original wound. Yeah. And so we got to get to the original wound and all the decisions that people made to that. And that's a whole process. So I'm not sure I can give like a quick, hey, here's a 5-minute meditation to get to that. But at least we gave a little construct as to what's going on. Yeah. That, and in the right hands, there are people that can help to bring that forth. And all of a sudden now our behavior can make some sense. You know, I share this story. I just got a message from a client that we had that left a couple months ago. Chronic pain for 15 years. Mm-hmm. Chronic pain, not really heavy addiction, but some anxiety issue. And so in talking to this person, hey, their life was okay. Just like mine. You know, my life was okay, but I put more drugs in my mouth than you can stick a stick out. Why? Mm-hmm. So we go through this process, and anyway, she sends me this note that she finally worked out a piece that she knew she had to deal with, that we identified and helped her identify here. All of a sudden, her chronic pain is gone after 15 years. Wow. So that's something, just letting people know. The reason why I'm sharing these different things is that there's some hope,
Yeah.
that there's some hope. But we must work on this thing in a holistic way, because if we look at the body, mind, soul, and spirit, our issues live in all of these. And it only makes sense that if we work on all of them, that we'll get a more sustainable resolution.
I love that, Dean. That's so great. And it's a really good summary for people to, you know, reach out, find someone, you know, finding someone that you feel safe with, that can support you, a professional, someone who is experienced in these areas, whatever the addiction is that you're dealing with, and making sure that it is a holistic approach, so that you really can heal. And so your website is sanctuary.net, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And do you have a free gift for our viewers?
You bet. I have, I think there's a link that'll go to an ebook. And what we did was we took the process that we go through and we synthesized it all down into a fairly manageable read. And it talks a lot about science, it talks a lot about spirituality. So that's worth getting. And the Sanctuary website has a lot of videos, and whether people come here or not is so not the issue. There's a tremendous amount of information out there, and we've gathered it. So happy to share it. You know, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is help change the paradigm of addiction treatment in the United States. For sure, you know, we have 10 people here at the moment, and they get all our attention. I live here. So this is my 24/7 thing that I do. But really, I think what we're doing here is helping to change the whole model. Yeah. And the more people that know it, the more we can push it out there. So the ebook, hey, you can download it, get it, it's free, enjoy it. And it might just give you that one little missing piece, because recovery is a puzzle, as is life. So many times I go to treatment again and they say, oh, you're starting from the bottom, you know, everything, blah, blah, blah. That's not true. A relapse means there's something that's eluding me. What is that one piece? And maybe they'll get it from looking at that book.
That's wonderful, Dean. Thank you for generously sharing that. And the link it is attached to this email and this interview.
Cool.
So thank you so much for this conversation. It was beautiful and very informative. And thank you for doing the work that you do, and for all the many people that you help.
Yeah, thank you, Katori, for what you're doing. And, you know, I'd just like to share with people, you know, if I can do it, anybody can do it, because, you know, I was pretty stubborn. I think I still am pretty stubborn. So, you know, if it can get through here, then there's hope for everybody. And I'd also let you know, Katori, if you want to come up, hey, we're only right up the road. So anytime you want to come visit us, I'd love to make you in person.
I will definitely be taking you up on that, Dean.
All right, cool.
Wonderful. So thank you so much for joining us. And to the viewers, be sure to check in tomorrow for some wonderful, wonderful tips and advice and connecting. And have a beautiful day. Thank you so much.